Hi there, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Class E Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. This is the podcast that's brought to you through a partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at Furman University and the Communication Studies Department. So we have a very special guest today. Hannah Robinson is a 2013 graduate of Furman. Does that sound like a long time ago?
Yes, it does. Almost 10 years.
Yeah. She started her own company, Go Bananas Social. I love this name. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So when you were at Furman, you were a studio art major.
Yes, I was.
So how did that parlay into what you're doing now?
It's been quite the journey.
Yeah.
Basically, I wasn't able to make artwork, initially straight out of college because, it's hard.
It's hard, yeah. It's very
work
hard.
is very difficult, but I did always find a way to work art into whatever jobs I had. And eventually, I had bosses who really recognized that, made roles for me, and ended up being in marketing, moved from in-house marketing to agency, and that's essentially the start of it. I left and started my own thing. So,
were there any moments at Furman that kind of, now that you look back, gave you the inkling that you're going to own your own company someday?
No, I never saw this coming, but I did have Ross McLean over in the art department in my corner, and a couple of times he would just either pull me aside or just let me know that he's like, you got something special, I want you to grow in this direction. He's like, why don't you do the graphic design specialty? And I was like, I'm going to do painting and illustration because that's going to make me money. No, but Ross was great, and he, upon finding out I'd started, he said, he's like, you've always been street smart, which I feel like is a compliment and
absolutely,
an attribute of entrepreneurs. So I did not know, but it's like someone was telling me, that the potential is there. So.
Yeah, I think that's important too, to always, if we don't listen to someone who's telling us that at the time, to keep it in the back of our minds because that advice is going to come up at some point. If that's the path we're meant to be on, and generally it is. So when did you decide, you're doing these other things, when working in marketing, when did you decide that, okay, I could do this on my own and start my own company? Because that is a big leap.
Yes. Well, I had my hands or my arms around the whole process of social media management with my clients at the last agency I worked at. So I guess it came to a point where I had a separate vision. I had more of a artistic vision. I wanted to apply. I really wanted to bring clients' personalities out a bit more. So I was really interested in having some more quality, and that would mean decreasing client load.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. And credit where it's due. I got to shout out to my boo, who was in his 5th year of entrepreneurship himself, and he really pushed me off that ledge. Gave me all the encouragement I needed, and was helpful just as far as all the nitty-gritty details to get going. Yeah. But left out the part about how incredibly hard it would be.
Oh, by the way,
it's like I knew, but there's nothing that can really prepare you for that. You just have to go. So.
Right. I would think though that the mindset of an entrepreneur is very similar to the mindset of an artistic person, of someone who would have an art degree, and so you always are in that innovation. How do I do things differently? How can I make this look better? That kind of mindset.
Yeah. I would say the thing that's played into that and is definitely part of our team dynamic is, in our department, when we would finish a project or even midway, we would put them up on the board. Everyone would have a chance to tell what they loved, what they hated. And we do that really well as a team. Yes. And I did that with myself in the creative process. Throw 100 ideas up or spend 2 hours thinking of everything you can. And then by the end, you'll know what's the star and what needs to go.
Yeah. So. Throw it against the wall and let it stick.
That's
what
right.
sticks. Right. I like that approach. One of my students actually said that the other day. It's super funny you just said it. On your website, it says that you know what you will be wearing a month in advance because you are that organized. And so, and that's how you express yourself in your design and the way that you dress and you do things. How do people who don't have your design aesthetic or an art degree like you do have, how are they supposed to put themselves out there, especially entrepreneurs, right? Because I think that's what many of us entrepreneurs struggle with is we have to talk about ourselves, we have to show ourselves. How do we do that in in an aesthetic way?
That's kind of a tough question. I would say just leading with that, being really transparent about who you are is the most important thing. And I feel like creativity, if it's not totally visual, it will follow. Like if we're talking about social media specifically, which is obviously a great tool for
Right.
entrepreneurs, what people really value is not the stiff, like super buttoned up, polished. You know, they want to know like why would I want to work with you, or like why do I want to support you or encourage you to grow. And you may eventually find yourself, you know, looking a little bit more visually appealing, whether that's outsourcing that or just you find your own style.
Right.
So that's a tough one. Like creativity is super important to me, but that's on brand for me.
Right.
So.
Right. Oh, I love that. On brand for you. That's true. And entrepreneurs, as we said, already have that kind of mindset to think outside of the box a little bit. So do that in the realm of social media and things like that would help them probably. Yeah. Okay. So you say your top strength is individualization. How do you apply that to your clients?
Well, clients, it's sitting in their shoes and thinking about what their strengths are as people or as a team, which, you know, it's a lot easier to recognize from the outside perspective. I have a hard time doing it myself. So, you know, some of that input was like my teammate being like, you're really good.
You
at
do this. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, you're right. So we try to do that for our clients. And then we also have that outside perspective of in like with what services they offer, what makes them special. So I would say it'd be using that empathy and, you know, thinking about it in their industry. Okay, but you specifically, because there's a million of what you do, but not who you are.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Say that again. There's a million of what you do, but not of who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to keep in mind as they move forward in their own ventures. You have, I'm sure you have one. Do you have an entrepreneurial philosophy about how to run your business? Something that you check in with yourself on a daily or weekly basis and say, okay, I'm doing what I want to do and this is how I'm doing it?
I do. So I started, when I first started, I was in a small business group board and it was just 4 of us who were interested in growth. And I quickly learned that like growth for us meant very different things. A couple of them were more like financially focused, you know, which is like kind of a no-brainer. But I was invested in personal growth and team. Like those were, you know, some of my roadblocks and in having that imposter syndrome, like how can I grow personally? Because I guess to circle it back to your question, I'm interested in longevity versus, you know, short-term success.
Yes.
That is really hard to stick to when you're financially strapped, but thinking about those important base pieces and like really tightening those up, and I've reaped the benefits from that.
Right.
So that is a check-in point for me.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Am I sticking to like what is going to long-term make us happy, make us successful?
So, you started the company in 2020.
Fun times.
Yeah, right in the middle of a pandemic.
That's right.
I'm sure you were scared to death about that. Did you have clients when you started? I know some people do, and you just went out. Oh my goodness, she's shaking her head no. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, she's shaking her head no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I started with. I'm proud of this. That I got through it, and that's how I started. I started with 0 capital and 0 clients.
Wow. Yeah.
I guess I'd come to a point where my creativity had died, and it was time to move on. So that was, you know, why I took this step, and then it was just blind faith. I did talk to, you know, I did some networking, and I eventually got my first, and then I got a huge lead. Then the lead dropped because of COVID.
Oh no.
So that was scary, but as we all know, social media is super important.
Especially during the pandemic, honestly. Yeah, they realized.
Oh, this is serious.
Yeah.
Which was great for me.
Yeah.
So.
I wonder if that lead regretted their decision to drop.
It wasn't their fault.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
say it.
Yeah.
It was Visit Greenville, the tourism department.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody was touring anywhere.
That guy had he was, you know, kind of a friend at this point.
Right.
But their budget, you know, it's like they couldn't help it. So
right.
No hard feelings there.
Yeah,
They're
right.
still great.
It happens. And you know what? I'm a true believer that when something like that happens, that if you've made the relationship, right, it's going to come back around.
That's right.
Eventually, right, when they're ready for it. What has been the hardest thing since you started your company that you faced that you're like, oh, somebody should have told me about this?
I would say it's like we all wear so many hats. The hat I never thought of, or I didn't see being such a huge thing for me is having good leadership over my team. I started this thinking I was going to be a one-man band, and that changed quickly. I know that specializing is really important for quality, so the team grew, and now it's managing how they feel about their jobs, checking in, but also holding them accountable to their tasks. It's just so many. It's like this push-pull of like, it's work though.
Right.
but like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Are you inspired? So it's tapping into that leadership side of me and also checking in with myself.
So how have you grown in between? So you started with just yourself. You thought it was just going to be yourself. How many team members do you have now?
I have 3 others full time.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's fast growth.
It's been crazy.
How did you come up with the name Go Bananas?
Well, I wanted something different than Hannah Robinson Studio.
Right.
Bananas are like such a disarming, fruit. They're fully silly, bright, fun. Like it captures me. I'm Hannah Banana, and Go is a great action word. So.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, that's an example of what you could do for companies, right there.
Yeah.
Just your name. What advice do you have for new entrepreneurs who, are just at the very beginning of their venture, and are like, oh, what do I do next?
I'm gonna borrow a quote, and I don't know if he borrowed it from somebody, that my friend Matt Cook told me recently. He said, walk into the room until someone tells you to leave. Just, which is part of that imposter syndrome.
Right.
Do I belong here? Is what I do worthwhile? Does someone value it? They definitely will. And if you, go too hard into that negative zone, you'll never get to that point where they do. Yeah. And that is so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
That is the number one struggle.
It is, because
you got this.
Yeah, we have that little self voice in our head that says you can't do this, or you don't belong here, or nobody's going to want what you have to offer. That little negative voice that all of us have that pops up ever so often, right? And so I call this rephrase when I do this for myself, and I, in my mind, I try to be mindful when that voice comes up. And I'm like, okay, rephrase that. Yeah. I do belong here.
Yeah.
Somebody is going to want to hear this today.
Yeah. So an extension
Yeah.
of that advice is just go to therapy also.
Right.
Just go to therapy. It's for everybody.
It is for everybody, yeah. And if you don't go to therapy, find a good friend who can take care of that for you. So what's next for you? How do you grow from here? Do you want to grow?
Well, next, I've been telling everybody, we don't want to think about people in our space and what they're doing or what we're seeing even locally, which, there's so much great inspiration there. But what are the top dogs doing? What do we want to do that maybe no one's doing? So, like, trying to think and going towards that direction, which means a lot of meetings talking about things that we have never done.
Yeah.
So it's just steering in a direction that is the total unknown, which has been my whole experience, but it's hard to encourage everybody to get on board.
Right.
And just
Not everybody likes that idea. Yeah.
So that is what's next. The next is unknown, but it's thinking about the possibility of what that is.
So on a personal note, I've gotten into TikTok lately, and it's very addictive. What are your thoughts on TikTok?
Yeah, TikTok. It's like Okay, I would say generally social media it's like choose your adventure.
Right.
It can be really toxic and not, terrible for mental health. And I say that just because I want to be totally transparent.
Right.
Like what we want to do is be on the good side of things.
Exactly.
And TikTok, for example, TikTok's great side is that it's really creative. It can be inspirational. If you, stay on a video that's good for you for a long time, your algorithm will adjust and you'll be served really great content.
Right.
So I love TikTok.
But if you get on the wrong side of TikTok.
Yeah. It's just being mindful about what you're consuming, because that's what you will be served over and over again.
Is that part of what you do for your companies that you work with? I know the normal social media like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. TikTok is now part of that as well.
TikTok is difficult because it requires the right kind of client and the right kind of input to be able to make it work because it is a beast. It can be a beast for time.
Yeah.
And
you have to be good on camera because it's all video. So
So if we're not using client in front of camera, it's thinking creatively about what can work for them.
Exactly.
It is something we are doing, but in general, we're like, who is this client? What channels are going to serve them the best with what they have or what they can like give us in the future?
That makes sense for sure. So what is something, as you look around social media, since this is your area of expertise, what is a mistake that you see companies making that you're like, gosh, I wish they'd clean that up?
All right, there's two sides of that. I feel like cleaning it up is a term that might feel like someone's got to like overly button up.
Oh, right.
You know, so that's like, it's more like a being wary of it. You know, we want to loosen up a little bit and be mindful of what channels that is. And then I would say speak to the people that you are hoping to serve that are in your audience or in your field that you operate in versus trying to sell too much.
Yes.
Because then if you take it off yourself, like here's what I do, even though we still need to share that, but really celebrating, you know, the audience that's in front of you, that's going to, you know, pay off a lot more.
I like that. The audience is the most important thing. Yeah. Hannah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
It's been so fun talking to you. So if people want to reach you, how do they reach you?
You can visit my website. There's multiple channels. I feel like our Instagram is the most fun. It is at Go Banana Social.
All right. Thank you.
And you can DM us. You know,
yeah, there you go. That's, you know what? DM is the way to go sometimes nowadays. Hannah, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, that does it, folks, for this edition of the Class E podcast. Remember, this is the podcast that's brought to you through the partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. I am your host, Mary Sturgill. And by the way, just in case you don't know, we have two ways that you can catch us now. Of course, you can listen to the podcast wherever you find your podcast, but we've also started our YouTube channel, so you can go there. It's the Class E Podcast YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to us to get all of our videos with all of our guests, and you can watch and, of course, hear the conversations as well. That does it for us. This episode is produced by Communication Studies majors Emma Kerr and Eliza Polich. I'm your host again, Mary Sturgill. Until next time, everybody, dream big.